Welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. If you guys could subscribe, that'd be great. Also, subscribe to the Tobin and Leroy show, which you can watch every day, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on the WQAM YouTube page. We got a lot of fun stuff coming your way this week. Miami Heat have a huge matchup coming up against the Cleveland Cavaliers on Wednesday night. And, of course, I think probably coming off Miami's best win of the season. One of those, in argument, is probably their win over the Cleveland Cavaliers. Of course, that was a much different state Miami Heat club, a team that, of course, had engaged Jimmy Butler at that point. They won with Jimmy Butler. Probably that stretch of the 4 straight wins. You sent the Lakers into a tailspin. You beat the Suns, the Cavaliers, and then, of course, the meltdown that happened in Detroit. And Jimmy Butler was playing some good basketball, which is one of the things that makes a lot of this dialogue weird with the Jimmy Butler thing. Like, I know there's a lot of stuff in hindsight of like, how did the Miami Heat not know? But I think you see some of the options that were out there and where the Miami Heat were at. Like, some of this stuff is getting drummed up because today there was a lot of fodder going around with the Jimmy talks that the Miami Heat have lowered their asking price. Brian Windhorst is going on First Take. He's predicting that a trade will happen soon, which I'm not denying that it could. But one of the things that I think has been interesting is everybody is out here and they're saying like, well, you should have traded him in the summer. And I'm not here to carry water for anybody or anything, but I do think that the Miami Heat were hopeful that, I don't know, Jimmy Butler could come and play basketball. And, it did seem like all of the messaging from Jimmy, from his camp, when they were still, excuse the pun, but were playing ball with the Heat, it all did feel like it was going in an okay direction. The Miami Heat were never great. I mean, they were 3 over with Jimmy. They had some real heartbreaking losses. They had yet to really unlock. They started the year with Jovic and Terry Rozier in the starting lineup. Terry obviously had a huge step back. Jovic has found this great bench role. But I think that's a hard thing to know. Like, hey, it seems stupid now because you're like, of course Jimmy Butler is going to be Jimmy Butler when Jimmy Butler wants to be Jimmy Butler and can hit the nuclear option. You're like, how could you not see this coming? But I don't know. I think that this was. I do think the Heat, in some regards, were sent for a bit of a loop where the way this all broke down mid-season. And I'm still curious about what has happened in the middle of the season to make it all turn left the way that it did, whether that be a health issue, from ankle injuries, sicknesses. Was there, an attempt at a renegotiation that went poorly and then it was detonation time? I don't know, but this hindsight above, oh, you should have just got rid of him in the summer, that one to me is a little bit squirrely. I think that, could the Heat and certainly Pat Riley face criticism because, hey, maybe fences weren't mended the way that they should have been? That I think is completely fair. But this idea that you just wanted to get up and get rid of, at that point, the face of your franchise, it's not an easy thing. These breakups are rarely clean and they're rarely great. And especially I think we see with the Heat, they can get messy. But the other thing that's interesting is, I think a lot of people are putting this spin out there. Well, like now the Heat are settling and now the Heat are, going to come and say, well, we had to make the trade just to make a clean break. I think my perspective on it has always been once this started to become messy, I really didn't think the Heat were going to get anything fantastic for Jimmy Butler. If the Miami Heat, in my mind, came back with a first-round pick, I think that would have been like a slam dunk. Or if they could get some kind of really productive young player that they scouted, they think is really good. To me, that's like, take your trip around the bases. Like, I think you're in a good spot. The one thing you don't want is to do what they did with Terry Rozier, which was an awful deal, which is you got desperate. Kyle Lowry, you just wanted him out so bad, and you made a move for a mediocre player and gave away a first-round pick. That was a horrendous deal for the Miami Heat, and I'm sure that the Charlotte Hornets were laughing their asses off when they hung up the phone, knowing they just fleeced Miami. I don't know how the Heat would have gone into any of this with the Jimmy Butler situation. Even with Jimmy being at the age that he was in the summer, I don't think the Miami Heat could have thought they were going to get this treasure trove of picks. And I know that that's been the line in the sand that they've put out there. Oh, they're looking for a great young player. They're looking for picks. They're looking for sweetener. Dude, when this situation did get to where it was, you need to be at the point where you're not hamstrung by anything. And like you said, you would just take the flexibility. Like, that's all we heard from Miami in all this, right? The idea that they would have just taken the flexibility and just had Jimmy eat it and walked because he says he was going to walk. Then all of a sudden, the reason this reeks a little bit more of desperation is now you've gotten to a time where you're not going to just get $50 million because now Jimmy Butler's at the point, well, who's going to pay for him? He's going to opt in, and you're kind of almost in this Chris Bosh-like situation with an extra year hanging over. But again, if the Miami Heat's ultimate dream is to get this 2026 golden cap space for a Luka Doncic pipe dream, which is what it is right now, perhaps an Anthony Edwards, then of course we'll get into the news of the day with all this. Initially, everybody was like, "Oh, well, we'll just take the flexibility. We're cool with just not trading him. We're cool with the finish." And when he was clearly like in the point where I'm not going to play basketball productively for you anymore, and that wasn't going to be an option. At that point, if the Miami Heat really felt when you went from statement, we're not trading Jimmy Butler, to we're now dealing with Jimmy Butler, we're now listening to offers, if you thought at that point you were going to get anything of value, I think you're crazy. The only way that was going to happen, I guess, is if you were going to put this montage of teams together for Bradley Beal. And the Bradley Beal thing's been probably the most unspoken thing in all of this because I feel terrible for Bradley Beal. I really, really do. Like, I saw the statement that his wife put out that he's getting heckled by people in the stands. I saw this interview that he did afterwards. And, you know, he really has done nothing wrong here. All the guy has actually done is live up to his contract and hold up the protections that his contract has. If the Phoenix Suns didn't realize that in the moment and they feel like they could just passive aggressively bully him, that's a lousy thing to do, for this guy who, did agree to come to your franchise, because he did have a no trade clause when he came from Washington. He's like, oh yeah, I'd love to team up with KD and Devin Booker. And they're like, immediately, because they want Jimmy Butler. In a way, I respect it from Bradley Beal. I thought it was really, really crappy. Stephen A. Smith went public and he goes, "Where's your respect?" And I thought that was crazy because Stephen A. Smith publicly has kind of backed Jimmy Butler with all this. And one of the things that I think has always been a solid way to go with Stephen A. is he usually lives by one code when it comes to NBA players, and that is show up and do your job, right? The guys that he rips, Zion Williamson, Ben Simmons, James Harden when he tanked, all of these guys, from my standpoint, Stephen A. Smith has said, hey, from the one thing, do your job. And then, of course, when it came to Bradley Beal, he twisted and goes, well, where's your respect? You're just showing up to a job where nobody wants you. It's like, well, when did that become the thing? Like, if ESPN didn't want Stephen A. Smith, I honestly think that he'd be professional enough to still show up and do a bang-up show every single time until his contract was up. So, and I don't understand why that deserves less honor and defense. Not that Stephen A.'s take is the end-all, be-all, than what Jimmy's doing, which is, even today, I'm still watching Stephen A. Smith, and he's trying to, disparage where the Miami Heat are at with all of this. And, yeah, has it gotten petty? Has it gotten to throwing stones both sides? Are the Miami Heat blameless in all this? Absolutely not. And this is coming from a guy who everybody knows, who watches this channel. I was team pay Jimmy, give him his extension. I'm a huge Jimmy Butler fan. And I hate to see where this is at. But I also can acknowledge, man, the way Jimmy has handled this is awful. And especially with guys in that locker room who he's played with for a very, very long time, making it weird. All because, why? Some other guy got an extension. Like you're not the guy who's making $15 million more than everybody on the payroll currently. Like people have gone out here and they're like, well, he doesn't, they took care of Bam, they didn't take care of him. It's like, no, they did take care of him. He makes $15 million more this year. And if he wanted to next year on anybody on the roster. Like I'm missing the spot where the Miami Heat have slapped Jimmy Butler in the face for being the very highest paid player on the team. And then on top of it, the guy who I really think I feel for is Nikola Jovic, because Nico loves Jimmy Butler. And I'm reading some of these quotes, and I'm like, man, I feel for this kid. Like, Jimmy Butler did a lot of great things for him, and I'm not going to lose sight of that. Like, really stuck in his corner when a lot of people in the organization maybe were, like, questioning. Jimmy had his back, but I do think that, and Nico is publicly still sticking by Jimmy. But I just couldn't imagine, like, I'd be like, this is the way you're gonna go down with all this? Like, yeah, as Nico said, quote, he has a right to be unhappy, but it does have to bum you out on some level, because I would have thought, like, hey, Nico's now starting to flourish. Like, wouldn't you want to play with your guy at least until better resolutions can be met? Like, it had to go this sideways. So I'm getting off topic on what the point of today was. But anyway, the big news was people are saying the trade demands are coming down for the Miami Heat. They seem to be in a spot where they're engaging with more teams because I guess their demands are more reasonable. Mind you, look, I still don't think the Miami Heat should bend on taking long-term money. I saw today there was a Philly rumor. A guy's like, oh yeah, Philly's snooping around. Joel Embiid wants to trade Paul George. But I'm like, dude, I would rather have Bradley Beal than Paul George. In all honesty, right now, Paul George has looked like a shell of himself. I would not be down with that in the least. And then the Grizzlies thing still looms out there. I really, with all the Bradley Beal stuff, that was interesting. If you guys missed the report, this guy, Fred Katz from The Athletic, had reported that he will not waive his no-trade clause for Chicago, which was kind of the weird landing spot. Like, we're all really, like, seemingly grasping at straws here. And he doesn't seem like he wants to go to Milwaukee. He doesn't want to go anywhere cold. He, crazy enough, would like to live his life in a city that is really nice, which Phoenix, I've never been, but I've heard is lovely. So if Bradley Beal is really not set on going anywhere but Miami or a warm market, which is what, the LA teams, well, the Suns thing is dead, dude. Like, it's dead. I don't know, like, what the engagement is left. It doesn't really feel like, unless, like, Orlando wants to get in the game for Bradley Beal, it just feels like that pipe dream, it does feel like it's shattering a little bit. And I don't know where Jimmy's heart is with the options and whatnot, because Memphis, all the while, basketball-wise, has seemed to make the most sense, even if it is a rental. Because one thing I didn't know, this was my ignorance, but Windhorst said today on, I don't know if it was, I think it was SportsCenter, maybe it was Scott Van Pelt, but he had said that even if he gets traded, he can't sign a new deal this year. I was under the impression that he carries his rights. I thought that if he left, whatever team he goes to, he could sign an extension with. And apparently that's not the case. He still would, I guess he would have to wait if that is the case. If that is the case and he doesn't have like an extension in hand for the Suns, I don't know why you wouldn't try and at least get I think your ultimate FU to the Miami Heat would be go carry the Grizzlies. But what do I know, man? I'm just, I'm trying to find solutions in a bad situation with all of this stuff. And, from my standpoint, if the Miami Heat came away with this with somebody like a Jalen Wells, or they came out of this with a pick, to me, I mean, like, that would be awesome. If they could come out of this with really nothing, but their books are going to be still pretty clean in 2 years, as long as it's not an awful fit. Like, I saw Julius Randle was something thrown around today. Like, dude, wasn't into that in the summer when the Knicks. The thing is, I saw that rumor where it said, well, the Heat had interest in Julius Randle, and I was like, That doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. What it seems like is the Knicks were interested, because it seems to me like the Knicks were interested in trading Julius Randle for Jimmy Butler, because obviously he's a Tibbs guy. That was before the Karl Anthony Towns thing. Now, listen, it's worked out swimmingly for them. Cat's been awesome. That team's been really, really good. But I'm not into Julius Randle on the team. And part of it has to do with, like, look, for me right now, the path is clear for this season, okay? You have the guys you're going to wrap your arms around with the Miami Heat, and it's going to be Bam, Tyler, Kalel, Nico, Duncan Robinson. That's your unit. I don't know who's starting, who's not starting, but those are your 5 guys who you're like, we're going to see where this goes. Even if it's an embarrassing gentleman's sweep, everything needs to be about what can this turn into in certain moments of games. Hopefully along the way, Jaime Jaquez gets things together. Terry Rozier can start hitting some threes. Pella Larson gets some moments. Maybe even you throw a Keyshawn Johnson in there. But from my standpoint, the rest of the season is like, can Bam get his offense back together? If they do get in a playoff series, can Tyler Hero shut some haters up and ball out in a postseason series? And then, dude, what is the limit on Kalel Ware and Nikola Jovic? Like, what can they be? And Duncan Robinson just being steady as they go. All of those things are to me the most interesting part of the season that's left. I'm not into bringing in a Julius Randle to be like, hey, I got to make something happen here. It's like, all right. I mean, he's not a bad player, but it's like, is he going to be cool with like, hey, we're not closing games with you? I think that's a very credentialed player like him, like an all-star. Is he going to be down with that? I don't know. That would be a little bit squirrely to me. Certainly, one of the benefits of having somebody like him, I guess, would be like in the non-Bam minutes, you have a little bit more of an offensive threat. A guy who could certainly, is not the defender that Bam is, but, can provide some of that. It's not like he's a zero, but I have the bigs that I want to close with. And I know I'm jumping to conclusions here after one game, but I think you guys know the video that I had before the game. Like, this is an idea that I am fully invested in to see whether it can fly or whether it's going to flop and flounder. So my big take from all of this day is I hope the reports are true that we are nearing a deal. Certainly the Miami Heat are going to get some criticism for the return that they get if it's not impressive. I don't know why you would think it would be impressive unless there's some kind of bidding. The only way it's going to be impressive is if there is a bidding war for Jimmy's services for a team to be like, hey, they're offering this, and it's 2 teams in the same conference. Like, let's say Houston just theoretically, I know they're not into it, but let's just say like Houston and Memphis are both in it. Who's more, that's how you get into a battle. And that's probably one of the positive sides if the Heat are ejecting from this Phoenix stuff, even though I know Sham says they're still engaged with them. Warriors, Memphis, like that to me, if the Heat can, that's how they're going to be able to come up with something better. But I'm not expecting to be dazzled. I'm just hoping that the break can be pretty clean and the Miami Heat won't be in an awful position with all this. That's really what I am hopeful for. But I was hopeful. I'm not gonna crush. Hey, they should have had the foresight about this, because I was hopeful that the Jimmy Butler thing could work out one more time. I was wrong. Didn't. Seemed like it was going to be all right, but the hostility held over. I get why it did. The Heat are not blameless in that at all. But, from now, with this point of no return, they need to get to a point where once the trade deadline is here, he really, like, I made this point the last suspension. It's like, dude, he can't play for the team anymore. And if they can't get this done, like, they're doing a disservice to themselves and the rest of that locker room. But I do think where the coach is at, the front office is at, the locker room is at, the way they were emotional, it does feel like they're all pulling the rope in the same direction to get this thing done.